Hey guys, it is Last Prohegan. Welcome to the spicy edition of my game reviews. This time around we're looking at Sudden Strike 4, which is the newest addition in a series that is over 1.5 decades old. And in my humble opinion, the Sudden Strike series is one of the gold standards when it comes to real-time strategy games. Sudden Strike 4 once again puts you as the general in World War II, and in the single player you can pick from one of the three set campaigns: Soviet campaign, Allied, and German. But hey, without further ado, let's jump into some of those positives and negatives about the game. On to the first positive. This game is largely unchanged from its predecessors, and that's a good thing. A lot of the familiar mechanics are still there, but now with a much more polished look, even though I never really minded the 2D graphics. Yeah, so this game, it has all the right stuff that it still came with from the Sudden Strike 2 series or the Sudden Strike series. I didn't play a whole lot of Sudden Strike 3, but at least from looking at the two oldest ones of the series, this game has not changed that much in how the game is played. Another positive I have about the game is, just like its ancestors, the levels you play in the game are not a walk in the park. Real strategy needs to be thought out here, just kind of like the genre. And this typically falls into a game where visibility, positioning, ammunition, and supplies are a huge key, which is such a Sudden Strike motto. I'm sorry, I'm gonna keep messing that up. But yes, you have to worry about things like bullets, high explosive or armor piercing shells if you're in tanks, gas. All these things play a factor into how well your troops can fight on for, and whether or not they can stay supplied for a long enough time, which are all really cool facets of the game that not many other games in this genre have done that well. My last positive about the game is your ability to really use the full map to its potential. Nothing is really off limits besides the four corners that they give you. And I mean that not in some silly way, but I mean that in maneuvering, and you can use the whole field, the whole city to your advantage, because sometimes just running straight at them isn't always the smartest idea. Doing flanking, maneuvering around and maybe punching a hole through and then coming around and kind of doing a hammer and anvil sort of thing is what this game is awesome about. And then you can use things like artillery, and artillery, you may not even know where the enemy is, but if you just want to blindly carpet a whole area thinking that that's where they're going to be, you'll find out real quick whether or not people are going down or not, which I think is so cool about the game, and that's something that not many other real-time strategies do a whole well. And then the whole combined arms thing. Sudden Strike has always had the ability to play as infantry, play as tanks, play as planes, play as boats. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can use combined arms to complete the mission, and I think that's what's so cool about this game. Alright, on to the negatives, and I'm going to come in real hot with probably my biggest negative about the game, and that its unimaginative cover system. I find it to be tolerable in the older games, like in Sudden Strike 2, due to the 2D graphics. That was fine with me, but in the wake of games nowadays, like Men of War and Company of Heroes, that have very intuitive systems for infantry ducking behind cover and finding which places are best for them to sit, Sudden Strike 4 is woefully lacking behind this. Your infantry troops really only have three options when they engage in enemy fire. That is to either A, stand up and just shoot and get hit immediately, B, lay on the ground, or C, if it's there, run into house, run into rubble, run into some sort of cover, but that's just like entering a four-dimensional building. It's very, very unimaginative, and that's kind of frustrating about the game, is that there is a major element of tacticalness being taken away when your infantry just have so few options to take cover and engage the enemy. My last negative about the game, it has to do with the aiming, hitboxes, and hit points mechanic, because just very similar like I had in my Syrian Warfare review, and basically what I saw in this game, I got really frustrated at what it seemed like. It seemed less like my men or the enemy were really taking aim at each other, and more like the game was just arbitrarily making them shoot at each other a few times before a bullet actually hit. It's hard for me to kind of explain this. The best way I can explain it is if you are just to pick up Men of War. It's pretty cheap now. You pick up the original, and you look at how the guys fire at each other in that game. You can even take aim. You can even almost play as a semi-third person shooter. Take a look at that game if you're kind of confused as to what I'm saying, and you'll get a much better idea, because that is a game where your guy is shooting a single bullet, that bullet will land whether or not someone is there or not to receive it. which is kind of what I expect. I don't really look to see a game where there's just people blindly firing as though it helps make the thing more realistic, because it doesn't. I think it's sometimes pretty silly, and it really rustles my jimmies when my company is maybe moving through a field or something and we get opened up by a machine gun nest, and my guys have the time to stand up, assess the situation, maybe have a few bullets fly at them, maybe they get hit once and lose some hit points, then they lay down, have a sandwich, contemplate life as these bullets just keep arbitrarily firing past them. And I just think that's silly. I thought the older games did a much better job at this, but Sudden Strike 4 is almost making it feel somewhat easier by having this weird sense of aiming and hit points and hit boxes. And then you see the same thing with tanks. Tanks with their aiming, sometimes they'll just keep firing at the same spot even though it's not hitting, even though it feel like it should be hitting the men that they're aiming at. Sometimes I don't really get how the aiming is worked out in this game. Alright, now on to my verdict. Sudden Strike 4 could seem like a daunting game for some. The $50 price tag is not for the faint of heart, and it might deter people who are new to the real-time strategy genre away. However, if you're a red, blood, and seasoned veteran like myself in this genre, I would recommend the game. I do not think you'll be disappointed. If I had to give this game a rating, I would give it a semi-solid 3.5 out of 5 Gs. However, if you're still wet behind the ears, then I would highly recommend picking up the older versions of the game, which were just released on Steam. I believe you can pay like 15 bucks for the whole bundle, and that one includes Sudden Strike 2, which, in my humble opinion, is the superior game of the whole genre. But that's just me. I'm Last Brohegan, and as always, guys, happy gaming, gamers.